there are a lot of new people here today. So I'm Janice Arnoldy, and I'm the chapter leader for Social Media Club Niagara. And I'll just give you a little bit of background on the club. Social Media Club is part of a worldwide organization of clubs. I think there's now around 300 around the world, and somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 members going to meetings. So it's a pretty robust organization. We have our meetings once a month, and if you see the sticker, and help yourself if you want one, the club's motto is, if you get it, share it. When we started, there were just a couple of us who worked in the social media industry, and we decided that we wanted to get a club together in Niagara so that we could start to share our knowledge. And over the last year and a half, we've had a lot of people who have become regular members. We have a lot of fun, and now there are a whole lot of people in the Niagara region who are in the you get it part who want to share it. And what I would like, there's a couple of things I would like to ask tonight. One is, we really want to get some of our core members to start to participate as presenters at meetings. So our next meeting is, let me put my glasses on, November 27th. We meet the last Tuesday of every month, and the location is to be decided, but hopefully we're going to come back here if it looks so far like it's working out well. We're going to do another debate. Tonight we're debating Pinterest. We're going to do another debate, and the topic is Facebook versus Twitter, which one is better for my business. So if there's anybody here who would like to take either the pro or con of that, we'd love to have a business person who is using Twitter successfully or really doesn't see there's a lot of point in it to volunteer to be one of our debaters. And if you think about it, you could either let me know, Robin, or Adam White, so you can email us directly or just approach us at the end of the meeting. Now, Social Media Club is a free organization. Membership is free. It has been supported for many years by the founders, Christy Wells and Chris Hewer, and they're finding now they've had open membership. So those of you who have signed up online at Social Media Club Niagara, you've had a free open membership, and your profile is up there, and you've had access to everything on the website. And then they have what's known as a professional membership, which is $100 a year. What they're having to do now, reluctantly, is change a bit of the structure. So the open membership will not exist in the sense that you will no longer have a free profile on the socialmediaclub.org website. You'll still be getting emails about events and information, but you won't have that profile. And as well, they're going to start to offer some more member-only services. Right now, if you're a member, you're invited to webinars and book reviews and so on. And I think when they relaunch the website, there's going to be some sections that are for members only. And again, it's very reluctantly that Christy and the board has had to come to this decision to do this. Right now, we have 5 professional members from Niagara. And I would really love to see, if you're getting a lot out of these meetings and coming regularly, I would really love it if you would consider going to socialmediaclub.org and signing up for a professional membership. So that's my pitch for that. Did everybody check in? Yeah? So if you didn't check in, please either check in or go on the sign-up sheet. If you are not a member yet or on our mailing list, go to the Facebook page, SMC Niagara, facebook.com SMC Niagara, and Robin, there's a sign-up link there, yes?
Yes.
So there's a sign-up link there to get on our mailing list. If you do not, we're having some trouble. Some people aren't getting the monthly mail out to, for the topic of the meeting and location. So just check back on the Facebook page when it's getting, near the end of the month, and you'll always find the information up there. So tonight we are going to talk about Pinterest, the great Pinterest debate, moneymaker or time waster. And we have our 2 debaters here with us. Allie Hughes from Hughes & Company is taking on the Pinterest is good. And Adam White from JMR Logistics / Upper Rapids, and on our one of our founders of Social Media Club is taking the it's not so great side of things. So a couple of facts about Pinterest. Who here knows or who here doesn't know what Pinterest is? Let me start with that. So everybody's heard of Pinterest. So Pinterest is a virtual pin board or bulletin board, if you want to think of it as a bulletin board. You can go and you can create your own account, then you can create your own pin boards. You can pin from other people's boards things that are interesting. You can follow people and get all of their pins. You can follow specific boards that you're interested in. And it's a way just of exchanging images and commenting and meeting people who have similar interests. You can also add a pin it button on your website now, so share it on Facebook, Twitter, pin it on Pinterest. And you can connect your Facebook accounts to, your Pinterest account to Facebook and Twitter. So I'm sure I'm taking some of what these guys are going to talk about. But Pinterest right now is the 5th largest social network based on users. So there's 10 million users on Pinterest, and that's been in the past year. It's grown that much. But it ranks 3rd behind Facebook and Twitter based on visits. So July 2012, there had been 23 million unique visitors and 1.7 billion page views. So it's pretty significant. Most of the visits come from the United States right now, so 12 million of those from the US. Interestingly, the gender breakout in the US is 83% female and 17% male, and in the UK it's almost split evenly. In fact, it's 56% male and 44% female. And I don't think anybody really knows exactly what the reason for that is, except maybe UK men are a little more sensitive. No. The most popular categories: food and drink, arts and crafts, what is home decor, which are categories that people think of as traditionally women. 73% of Pinterest users say they use it to entertain themselves and help pass the time. That's a much higher percentage than on Facebook. 70% say they get inspiration on what to buy on Pinterest, and that's only 17% on Facebook. So it's interesting, you look at the numbers, the click-through rate on Facebook, so in other words, clicking a link to go to a website is much, much higher on Facebook than it is on Pinterest, but people are more likely to buy through Pinterest from seeing the images. Now, of course, we're talking about 1 billion people on Facebook and 10 million on Pinterest, but from a percentage point of view, it's interesting because they are quite competitive. So that's pretty much covers the facts about Pinterest that I wanted to cover. So what we're going to do is Ali and Adam each have 5 minutes for their opening remarks. Then I'm going to ask some questions, and then I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience, and then we can really nail them with some hard stuff. So which one of you wants to go first? Clearly Ali, because Adam's not paying any attention.
I'll go first.
Ali Hughes.
Stop. So I'm going to talk to you about why Pinterest is good for business. For those of you who don't know, I actually do run a social strategy firm, and we do use Pinterest with some of our clients. The number one reason that we're using Pinterest is to disseminate information about a product quickly to gain brand awareness. So we're actually doing a product launch with a client right now. They're in the camping industry. They're introducing a full new line of tents. We put those tents on Facebook. We put those tents on Pinterest. In Pinterest in 4 days, we had 14 million views, and on Facebook, we have about 2,000. So to give you some perspective on how quickly you can disseminate information, there's a boom kind of example, Adam. Beyond that, we use Pinterest as sort of an authority builder for people who are working in industries that have sort of an aesthetic appeal to them. One example that some people have heard me talk about before is the interior design example. So we work with 2 different interior designers with Hughes & Company, and we encourage them to use tablets as part of their sort of pitch business strategy. So when they go visit a client, they take their tablet with them and they have their portfolio. There's a strategic elimination of a certain number of images from their portfolio, and those images are the ones that we're working with on Pinterest. So when they go visit their client, they say, bam, 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 there's my portfolio. I do have a couple extra pictures to show you. So they hook their tablet up to Wi-Fi if they have it enabled, or just do it through their smartphone, and then they say, these are the pictures that we're showing through Pinterest right now, and this one has 12,000 views. So all of a sudden, their client's not saying, hey, I'm hiring an interior designer. They're saying, I'm hiring a famous interior designer, and it adds some validity to their decision to use that particular person. Beyond that, Pinterest is a great resource for humanizing a brand. One of the big examples that's happening right now is the Romney campaign in the United States. If everybody's been watching a little bit of U.S. politics, I'm sure you've seen the Robin's making quite the face about discussing the Romney campaign. I apologize.
It's all right. I'll get over it.
With the Romney campaign, there was a lot of like prodding at that campaign for being a little bit too wooden. Mitt Romney is not the greatest relatable figure in political history. In fact, his wealth and business achievements make him quite unrelatable. So one of the things the Romney campaign did to sort of combat that vision was send potential First Lady Ann Romney to social media, and her biggest facet of social media right now is Pinterest. She's using Pinterest to show things that she likes, ideas for her bathroom. They're probably not ideas for her bathroom, but they're things that are making her look more human and appealing to the general broad audience that's using Pinterest in the United States. Other ways that we're using Pinterest, one of the accounts that we work with is President's Choice, and they've got pet insurance. So pet insurance seems like the kind of thing that you wouldn't really throw up onto social media or have much to talk about. It's not really very compelling, and the details of pet insurance aren't that exciting. But what we do is we pin pets, basically. We pin the pets that deserve to be insured. We compel people who have pets that look just like them, or they think their dog's cuter than that dog. Well, this one's insured and yours isn't. I know that's kind of like the dark side of the reason we're doing it, but it's working quite well for them. Their Pinterest following is growing quite substantially, and we're seeing them put lots of like text and words over top of the images of the animals now. So that was the idea behind the campaign, and we're looking at about an 8 million person reach right now with that campaign. It's been going for 2 months, but that's still a substantial number of eyeballs. So, I mean, I believe in Pinterest for some business. I don't know if I necessarily believe in Pinterest for all business. But I think there's creative ways to use a very visual medium for most industry. Thank you. Stop.
I have to put on my villain face.
Here it comes.
So Mitt Romney. Oh, that didn't go very well. If you go onto Facebook and you see updates from friends and family, and the stuff that you use Facebook for because you really like Facebook and you like your friends and your family, and then every once in a while you have that annoying aunt who posts nothing but weird inspirational pictures with words over them that are supposed to be inspiring. That's what lives on Pinterest. That's what goes there. It is the home base of inspirational quotes with bullshit written on them. Pinterest has a purpose if you are either a large brand or you're a brand that has a large visual component. What we are finding for a lot of the internet is that Pinterest is not necessarily something that can be used very well by a smaller business, a locally based business, or a business that has a less than visual aspect of it. If you are a local insurance agent, it is very hard for you to get a following on Pinterest that's going to mean much to you, because unlike Facebook or Twitter, which for us around here seem to be predicated on local connections, Pinterest doesn't necessarily have that. If you go and you pin a bunch of things, it's up there for the world. There's nothing that's geographically linking you together. Now, when we do see the geographic links come into Pinterest, it tends to be because it's going, oh, your Facebook friends or your Twitter friends are on here. Which means that Pinterest in and of itself isn't being incredibly useful. It's being useful insofar as it's a place where you can dump things for your Facebook or Twitter friends to look at. Now, aside from the actual strategic reasons why you may want to use Pinterest or may not want to use it, Pinterest is a bad internet citizen. Pinterest does not respect copyright in a way that makes any sense. When you pin something, it takes that picture and copies it from wherever it originally was and plops it up onto Pinterest. It's not the same thing, for example, as a Google image search, where you're getting images that are linked back to where they originally were. If you're an artist and you've drawn a picture, or you've produced a piece of art, you've taken a photograph, and that has been pinned and repinned and repinned, it has been copied and recopied onto different pin boards on Pinterest. For you to take that away from, say, a copyright violation perspective is very difficult because it's all over the place at this point. none of those pins necessarily have links back to your original content. They're copies of it. And if you look at Pinterest terms of use, they basically are waving their hands and saying, well, this is all, it's all under fair use, so what happens, happens. We're protected by the laws about that. And by the way, we have permission to use a lot of these pictures commercially if we want to. So it's not a great citizen of the internet. If you're a content producer and you are trying to sell a product, and you have pictures of your products, sure, Pinterest makes sense to disseminate that information. However, if you want some control over how your picture is presented, over the wordage that goes with it, over the way that it's shown and the context in which it's shown, Pinterest takes that away from you and gives that to the pinner. And as more people start to use Pinterest as their default image search instead of, say, Google, it's taking a lot of that control away from the original producers. And that's one of the problems that a lot of us tend to have with Pinterest. I'm going to glare at you between things. So what we're also finding, though, is that if people don't have a major visual component to their business and they are using Pinterest, they are using it in ways that don't tend to be very engaging to the Pinterest audience as much as they're using it in a way that they think they should be on Pinterest because Pinterest is the next big thing. And we should really avoid that. Pinterest is where it really became evident that you should be using the social network that fits for you, not that you should be using the popular social network. And every time you see a social media person like one of us with a Pinterest board that's full of pictures of graphs, you know that the wrong people are starting to use it. People like Janice.
Nice. This is a question for Allie, because Adam has talked about Pinterest as just being valuable to companies who have a visual component. And Allie, do you have some thoughts on how a B2B company could use it? For example, a manufacturer selling a product to a wholesaler selling a project to a manufacturer.
I just advised against it, honestly, professionally. I mean, there were some compelling reasons as to maybe why it might work, but again, it goes back to having to compel the people that you're doing that business with to actually follow that feed. And it's easier to gain that captive audience for business to business on something like Facebook or LinkedIn. I would say business to business would be best off probably not utilizing Pinterest as a medium. I would say that it's more business to consumer style business. And as far as what Adam was saying with the visual aspect, I mean, I would argue that there's lots of businesses that don't think they have compelling visual aspects that do. They do have interesting things. It's not interesting to them because they see it every day, and it's a part of how they exist and a part of their daily routine. But for people who aren't privy to that, I mean, there's certainly something compelling about that if it's an existing area of interest. But I don't think. I mean, it's hard for me to stand on the pro side of Pinterest for business to business because I would never advise that.
To take off my villain hat, Allie's right in this case.
Stop.
Yeah. If you are a strict business, using it from a business perspective, it is not necessarily the place that you want to do things. One of the reasons why we will tell businesses that don't have a major visual aspect about them to start, for example, taking pictures of what's going on around the office, about what's happening, in the lives of the people that are in the office, and posting those things to something like Facebook, is Facebook, by the nature of it being a timeline, allows them to create that nice, engaging narrative about the business. You see the day-to-day lives, the trials and tribulations of this business as it's developing, as it's growing. You see their successes and the things that they want to highlight. You see the little funny jokes that they're pulling in the office. And something like Facebook organizes that very well. Pinterest, for those purposes, that becomes a little bit more of a jumble, especially if people aren't looking at your company by looking at your pin board, especially if they're just seeing these images floating into the general sort of Pinterest stream of things. It's a lot harder to nail that narrative on it.
I'm just going to follow up on that. You don't get a rebuttal. Just to follow up on that idea with Pinterest and Facebook, do you think, because there is less engagement on Pinterest, and it's not linear for that engagement to happen, but do you think that there is a way that Pinterest can evolve in what it's offering to provide that kind of narrative?
Well, I mean, data is data, so it depends how it's organized and how it's presented. And so far, the way that Pinterest business model has worked is they have really encouraged the idea that you're creating pin boards that are matching up to different either aspirational lifestyle things. These are pictures for the baby's room. When we painted our nursery, we got the picture off a Pinterest board specifically because that's where we knew we could find pictures for the nursery. So, or ideas for wedding dresses. You have things that are collected in that way. that's how they're choosing to organize it, and that's sort of what makes sense for it. One of the things that Pinterest hasn't really done is, at the moment, and someone correct me on this if I'm wrong, because they change this all the time, is I don't think they don't allow private pin boards at the moment. So it's not necessarily somewhere where I could go and collect a bunch of information that, you know, I'm making a plan, these are all my ideas that I want for it. It's all meant to be very public, it's all meant to be very open and shared, and because it's being presented that way, it tends to lean more towards things where people are going to see the picture and go, oh, that's neat, repin. That's why you see it being used so much on, you know, for very creative kind of crafting purposes. You see a lot of things from Etsy end up on there because it's, look at that pine cone, I wouldn't have thought of doing that with a pine cone pin, right? And that tends to be the stuff that they're picking up. Anything that has a narrative structure to it is much harder because the images aren't necessarily being presented in that order.
Allie?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do agree
Sorry,
with.
can you also talk to the idea that there's a huge proportion of ratio of women to men on there now, and do you see that changing? And given that women make or are involved in 85% of the purchasing decisions,
Yeah, I was going to
doesn't
say,
really matter.
it's a huge advantage to have more women on Pinterest, especially because it's a business-to-consumer style medium, because women have purchasing power in households. Pinterest is huge for things like kids items right now. We're seeing a huge push for companies who handle kids' toys and kids' educational games moving into the Pinterest sphere because women have the purchasing power in that medium. Things like nurseries, like Adam was saying, I would put money on the fact that Adam's wife found that picture, not Adam. Yeah? No, you found it?
I helped.
You helped. He helped. She found it. But like that, those are the types of things that go viral so quickly on Pinterest because women are so engaged in it. That being said, I mean there are male Pinterest users, and you'll see that there's trends starting on Pinterest. I feel like every time I have to update any app on my iPhone, it's the Pinterest app because there's like a whole new list of boards or categories for boards that you can pin things into. And recently it has been more male dominated. Like they're breaking out sports into specifics. And I mean, it is, I know that that's stereotyping, but those are predominantly male dominated areas of the internet. So Pinterest is moving towards that a little bit. I can give one example. This is an example. It did lead to business for her, but not in the traditional sense. My sister is a photographer, and she took a picture of her boyfriend's Sperry's. Like he is like really cool Warren Sperry's on the dock, and she took a picture of it. And for some reason, someone found that on her photography website and just went nuts for it. It got pinned, and Sperry's bought the photo, and it was like male, like pin from boys, and boys got her that opportunity. So there are men who are participating, but it's not, I think the power is in the women. I think that's where the positive lies. At my house, I make the purchasing decision.
I'm just going to ask you two to sum up, Adam, you can start. Do you see Pinterest lasting in its current form or evolving into something quite different?
When you see businesses that have this much hype behind them, that they have this much of an audience that's grown in them, these systemic issues with things like copyright, they tend to get sorted. Some agreement tends to happen between the people that are producing things and understanding the actual utility of the usefulness of the product. Those problems, while like a great talking point for something like this, are not necessarily a reason why I would discourage you from using it. Where I would discourage you from using something like Pinterest is if you feel that you have to use it because that's where people are. There's lots of social networks now, there's lots of niche communities that are out there that are cropping up. If you have a product or a service that really truly makes sense in Pinterest, then by all means bring it there. If you don't know if that's the case, by all means use Pinterest as a user for as long as it takes for you to get a feel for what people are actually sharing on there. But just because there's going to be an article in the paper about, 50 billion people are now using Pinterest, or whatever the number is, I just made that up, just because that hype is there, it doesn't mean that you should rush back to your office and start the, Jack's Fireplace Store Pinterest page and start pinning pictures of fireplaces, expecting that necessarily is going to drive business. It should always be strategic.
But I think that, with lots of social mediums, there's also the opportunity to look at something like Pinterest as an opportunity to expand your business. I mean, you look at, there's the story of the girl who's a makeup artist, and she started to put videos and picture tutorials on Pinterest of her makeup tutorials, and now she's selling makeup tutorial DVDs, and she's a millionaire. I mean, I know that that's not the story for every business, but as local business people, we do need to be cognizant of the fact that there is a global community that can help us strengthen our businesses and gain new revenue sources. Local business has to recognize the concept of global village. So if Pinterest is something that you think could be an enhancer of your business, I mean, why not give that like a college try? Like there's opportunity on there, especially if there's a visual aspect to your business. You might try it and find out that it's not for you, but the essence of social media and the world of online marketing, and I know we don't like to use the word marketing as a part of a social media sort of concept, but I mean, it's your marketing department that's going to handle it. So if you use that as a facet of your marketing, I mean, why not just dive in and see if something happens for you, even from the perspective of authority building and being able to tie that into other mediums? I mean, there's opportunity there, I think, personally.
I think you could argue that Facebook, several years ago, why would a business be on Facebook? And well, everybody's just getting a Facebook page, right? And look at where it is now in terms of business use. So the question is, will Pinterest evolve? Or will somebody buy them, like Facebook, who decides they don't want to compete in that area?
In any case, it's a moving target, so
Yeah.
if the numbers are there, it will, it should evolve to better, especially to better meet the business use as the fact that more businesses are starting to get into Pinterest. You saw the same thing with Facebook, where Facebook did not at all really have options for businesses, so businesses just started using what was there. They were using, say, Facebook groups as business pages because those business pages didn't exist. Then, because Facebook saw they existed, now there's business pages. So you're going to see the same sort of evolution happen if Pinterest is serious about making a go at it as a real business, and I have no reason to expect them to don't.
Well, the one thing we didn't bring up is the fact that Facebook has all these rules about running contests on their platform, and you have to use a third-party application, which means you're going to get bogged down with advertisements with competitors because they're aggregating that information about your consumer, or you have to pay to use it. Whereas Pinterest lets you run contests like gratuit, nothing. They don't want anything from you. So this like whole pin it to win it campaign is a big deal. People are using Facebook to drive traffic to Pinterest so that people can pin it to win it. Even like, I remember I work with people who work with Honda, and Honda did this thing called Pintermission, which is where Honda users went on Facebook and like gave their piece about why they deserved a Pintermission. And Pintermission was basically they were overactive Pinterest users, and Honda was giving them a car and money for a day, and they got to go on an adventure, and the adventure was their choice. Honda was like bankrolling the adventure. They had to do it with a Honda car. Go. And it generated like a huge amount of consumer awareness for them. Like it was a really, really big deal on Pinterest, and it was trending on Twitter, and it was huge on Facebook. So I mean, there's that whole element of using those other mediums to sort of leverage that Pinterest medium as well, because you don't want to pay and you don't want to bog your clients down with, or not your clients, your consumer fan base down with advertisements. I mean, that's bad social business.
So to sum up, Pinterest will give you a car.
There you go. So get active. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to questions from the audience.
I get that it's very visual medium, good for branding, like I say, Blue, for example. I'm interested in finding people who have knowledge, which is more in depth, and it's gotten to the point that I don't really want to hear from people who only know about brands from my business. Is there any value in terms of Pinterest, in terms of finding people who have knowledge beyond branding?
If you're looking for a certain subject matter, what you'll find is that if there's an active Pinterest user that is very actively engaged in whatever the topic area may be, and they happen to be pinning things that are thoughtful and salient to that concept, then that's an indication of that. I don't necessarily know that Pinterest is going to organize things for you to be very easy in that respect, only because that's not the entry point where they're expecting people to use it for. Really, things like LinkedIn groups are probably a lot better way to get around that.
Basically, Pinterest is too shallow. There's no in-depth text available.
Right.
It would be much more difficult to parse because you would need to do a lot more sorting and do a lot more, okay, I see that this person is sharing a lot of things about this topic. Clearly they're influential about that topic. I'm going to look at their boards themselves. Okay, they seem to be putting a lot of things up there that make a lot of sense. They clearly have some knowledge there. Okay, I'm going to go further here. It's a lot deeper, or it's a lot more involved with the thought process.
Yeah. Ontario, would be a waste of time.
Yeah, and then again, the geographic keying of people on Pinterest is going to be much more difficult in that respect. So something like LinkedIn is probably a lot better there.
Anybody else? Oh, come on, they weren't that good. They left
Yeah.
you with no questions.
Oh. No, go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
One after the other.
Well, anyway, so I'm just trying to understand the pinned with a link attached. Does it go away if someone repins it, you're saying? Or?
No, it goes back. I mean, I was going to bring it before, but it does go back to the original website.
So is that not good? Like it drives them to your website?
It does drive people to your website. The issue is control. You can't really control where those people are coming from, so it's tough to target a specific demographic. But from the, I mean, Adam brought up like Etsy and things like that. People who have sort of e-commerce options for their business, it's hugely powerful.
Yeah. Where you might run into trouble is if, say, you go to change the source image that they originally pinned. If, say, the product on your website changed and you aren't, it doesn't look like that anymore, and you have a new picture that goes up with it, it's a little bit unclear about what happens to all the prior pins that were using the prior image. They probably all still exist. So it's not the same as, say, Google image search in that
Yeah.
if the image isn't there, it's not there anymore. It's really a copy of the image that ends up on the Pinterest, and that's where the sticky bit about copyright and control comes in.
Tiffany?
Well, I signed up for a Pinterest account. It's just a personal account to play with it. And I don't use it very often, but when I got the email saying that I was accepted to have an account, there were like all of these, rules basically. And I thought one of them was it shouldn't be used for promotion or business or to sell things. Did that change or did I?
It's changed.
It has changed? Okay.
Yeah, because they were experiencing a lot of heat, basically, and like Adam was saying, usually they try and sort those things out and then just kind of like update a new terms of use, and that's basically what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, promote away.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has an e-commerce platform somewhere where you have product pages and those products have some visual component to them, I would absolutely make sure that every one of those product pages is pinned with a link back to the purchase funnel, because why wouldn't you?
And make sure you put a deadline on those promo codes, because that's happened to people before. Where like it won't take off during the time of the promotion, and then it does take off, and then they have this unanticipated 30% date on all their profits. That happens. Be careful if you have e-commerce.
Yeah?
Do you recommend using any tool to help you pin things?
Can you just maybe stand up and ask your question a little
Oh,
louder?
sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry. Do you recommend any tool to use for helping you pin or providing you with analytical data like Pitterly or things like that?
Yeah, I have Pinterly on my, I use it with client accounts. There's ways to hook up Pinterest to existing analytic accounts depending on what you're using. I use a couple of different paid resources, but Pinterly is a really good way to access that data. Pinterly is only going to aggregate sort of like general topic interest points, so things that basically when you pin, your pin gets sorted into your board, but then your board gets categorized, so people will know sort of in general what the options are for you. As far as collecting consumer data and knowing what people are doing, Pinterest is more valuable when you put in the man hours. Knowing if you're in an aesthetic business, knowing what people actually care about, and then when those people are repinning your things, going and looking at other things that they find visually compelling. I mean, that's where the power in Pinterest comes in. So it can be laborious, but you can really carefully and closely target exactly what that visualization is for them.
We have a question over here.
It did. On Pinterest, they have you can shop for this amount of price with the little sash on the side.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Or is it inside of Pinterest or is it a separate app? Or?
And I think that's for Etsy clients. Etsy has a tie-in with Pinterest now, so those are really cooperative mediums. So everybody who's got an Etsy account gets that little like ribbon sash in the corner with the price or price range.
So as you know, it's only Etsy that
I believe it's Etsy that
from?
has it. There was talks about them doing a team up with eBay, but I don't believe that that's come into the works yet. And eBay just rebranded, so I would assume that they're waiting for that rebranding to launch before they did anything anyways.
Down there, Kathy.
I've seen some.
Can you stand up, Kathy, and just, or I'll repeat your question if you
some
can't hear.
interesting examples of combining Pinterest with Facebook. There's things like developing groups where you can identify who your local audience is and follow if you have similar interests around different topics. Or you can build community boards where you have local people all pinning together. So there's there's lots of
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So Kathy was just, in case you didn't hear down here, Kathy was just talking about the fact that you can create community boards. So if we're talking about local involvement in community building, you can create some groups and you can create community boards where people can come together on similar interests. I think I'm part of your Pelham Equestrian group, right? Was that great?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, are those boards through Facebook?
No, through
Oh, so through
Pinterest.
Pinterest, okay.
Yeah, you can add a user to a board, so you can like make a board applicable for a certain number of people. And I mean, the foundation of Pinterest is sort of like that really quick flip into evangelical marketing, that like really fast sort of like all of a sudden they're a brand advocate. On Facebook and Twitter, you really have to work for it. Whereas on Pinterest, the nature of it is repinning. So you put something up and you can really quickly flip people into people who are going to talk about your brand for you. And you can further empower them by giving them access to a board. So a lot of companies now have like consumer boards where they give people the opportunity to pin from a particular board. So that's one way that they're sort of gauging that, or not gauging, but encouraging that local participation, because people who follow those people are certainly, of course, local people. So it comes up in their feeds. They're working on the locality of the medium, I think. My impression is that they are.
I would assume.
Yeah.
I think we'll see it evolve quite substantially over time as they start to work out
I mean,
how
in
people are using it. And
From like the personal perspective as well, like I use it, I like it, and I like to see what my friends are pinning. And if I've got a Christmas party coming up, like I would never put blackboard paint on my mason jars unless I knew to do it from Pinterest. Like I really do like using the medium, and I think that it is a very compelling medium. So from my perspective, it's something that, I mean, yes, I'm watching it evolve and I'm looking at it from a business sense, but on a personal level, like I am using it to help me make consumer choices. I like it.
On a personal level, I don't want to use the thing unless I can use it as a search engine, which is great. You know, again, if we're looking for baby room things, that's cool. I don't necessarily feel compelled to pin stuff because there's part of my brain that doesn't get why I want to. But I'm better off not doing it than doing it half-assed.
That's true. The mantra for all social media.
Yes.
If you're going to do it, just do it right.
I think the issue that I have with Pinterest is that there is so much in a few categories. So for those of you who don't know, I'm super duper into horses. And that's a big thing on Pinterest. And horse people tend to do that, right? They jump onto these networks and share. If I go and I search horse, or I even search dressage, I get such, a gazillion million pictures in that pet category. So I find it almost overwhelming for some of the things that I would use Pinterest for.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure whether you can narrow down that
Yeah.
search even more to more relevant.
I mean, you get good at, like all mediums, you get good at navigating them. So with Pinterest, I mean, when you first like plunge in, it's like interior decorating and like knitting, like you would not believe. There's so much to look at and read, and it is kind of overwhelming. But the more you get into it and the more you start repinning things and finding things that you like and following particular boards, the smaller and smaller and smaller that network really does get. So, and that's another thing. It's a medium that pares down. I mean, with a little bit of effort from the user, it pares down quite quickly. So you are accessing people who actually care about what it is that you're looking at. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Should a business?
You two fight all the time over who gets asked a
It was
question.
Tiffany last time.
Can you sort of stand up and yell your question?
I don't want to stay. Could,
Okay, sit down and yell your
I'll
question.
yell. Should a business like follow their customers on Pinterest, and should you like repin their things, or what if you're repinning something that doesn't really apply to your business? What are your suggestions?
Sorry, the question, just a sec, Allie. The question is, as a business, should you follow the people, the customers who are following you, and should you repin things that your customers are pinning? Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, I think yes, follow your consumers and look at what they're doing. The fastest way to learn about your consumers is to be a part of their community. So especially because, like Adam said, it does take from your Twitter followers, and it does take, or the people you follow on Twitter, and it does take from your Facebook friends, and you can very quickly sort of aggregate a list of people who are relevant to your local community. So we're talking local business. And then you can watch what it is that they like and what they're into. So if there's ways for, I mean, especially when it comes to things like events, when it comes to things like not-for-profit use, you can very quickly gauge what people are actually going to care about. Very quickly gauge who should be at your event and what they should be presenting and those types of items. So yes, from a following your consumer perspective, sure. As far as pinning things from your followers, if they're relevant to your message, go for it. If they're not relevant, you're just doing it as like a pat on the back, I would say avoid it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
There's probably not a huge consequence, positive or negative, to pinning the things from your followers, unless you happen to be in a relationship with those consumers where they want to see you reciprocating what they're doing. If there's value in that, then sure. But if it's just going to be a shallow sort of thing where, look, we're engaging with you, then no.
Yeah.
You still have a question? Yeah?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, depending on your business, because one of the things I do has a lot to do with leadership and coaching, and it's a really useful place to do a vision board where it's almost like having a billion magazines available to you where you can pull that together. I don't know.
No, absolutely, you're right. And I mean, that's another thing. It's another thing. I should have just like prepared a better opening statement. Keep saying, there's another thing I should have told you.
You can only fit so much into
yeah.
5 minutes.
Thank you for being my advocate.
And you had to fit Romney in there.
And I had to fit Romney in there. I really wanted to include pro-Obama, but I went for Romney.
Does Pinterest have binders for women?
you could effectively create a digital binder full of women. Yes, you could.
And we're done.
Oh, that's so cute. But as far as like the vision board thing kind of goes, I mean, there's lots of things that are on Pinterest that might not be directly related to exactly what it is that your business does every day, but might be something that your consumers would find interesting. I mean, like all social media, there has to be a level of authenticity. If you just hammer people with a bunch of promotions and pictures of your stuff, they're just not going to care. So, I mean, like all social media, you do have to develop sort of a brand personality with Pinterest. And if you're in the beauty industry and you're pinning pictures of your client's wedding hair and your client's awesome haircut they just got, or their the best brow wax you ever did, like all those things, I mean, pair those up with those hair tutorials like I'm wearing my hair in a sock bun today because I would be a hot mess if I was here and it wasn't up. Like, it would just be a nightmare. So tell your consumers that. Tell them that this is a great rainy day hairdo. Like, why not? So yeah, like you can pin outside of your specific area of expertise as well.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering, what would you guys recommend people for your clients for how much time they spend to promote themselves on? I don't know. I can understand Twitter, which is different times during the day. You can't just do that and sit down for 10 minutes and then expect it to be done. Same with Facebook, but with Pinterest.
The question is, how much time and when should you put into Pinterest to make an impact for your business?
When,
Well, I mean, it largely depends on not necessarily how much time the interaction with Pinterest takes, but how long the content creation chunk of that job takes. So one of my clients is Nightmare's Fear Factory, so they're the ones that take all those pictures of the people at the end of the haunted house, right? Well, that's a machine at this point, where it takes a picture of everyone that goes in there. So content creation for them is a no-brainer because they have a computer that's sitting there collecting images all day long. So for them to share those out onto Pinterest is a matter of click, click, and it's on there. So for them, you know, put in the time because it's not a significant amount of time. If you're not that, if you don't have that golden goose that's creating awesome content for you all the time, and you have to really work for that, that's where your cost-benefit analysis is going to come in, and how much time then do you come in thinking something up to put onto something else?
I have a question for somebody in the audience, and I hate to put you on the spot, Monique, but Monique is the social media person for Sun Media.
Yes.
So all of the Sun Media papers across the country. And are you using Pinterest
We're not.
in your
The
news
copyright
organization?
issues for us right now. We're still exploring that because of what Adam covered earlier.
Do you see it as something that would become valuable to your?
I think it's certain areas, like lifestyle, maybe arts reporting, but overall, for news, I'm still not certain yet. News.
Any other questions? We'll have one more and then we'll see.
It's more of a comment, really. I was thinking about what Adam was saying about how much work it might take you to create content that people can pin. And I've been playing around with Pinterest and trying to figure out, okay, if something on my website can be pinned, did I brand it a certain way so that whether the link is lost or not, that image has my website on it, so I stamp my work.
Pinterest no.
It's a no-no?
Yeah.
Well,
it's like
then-
an inauthenticity thing.
It's
It
an
won't-
inauthenticity
Yeah,
thing.
your link won't get lost until unless someone actually physically removes the picture and associates it with another link. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like a bookmark.
But you don't think that it's prudent to copyright your stuff? Like as photographers, if you want to show your work, you can stamp your work?
Yeah, like stamp your work, but if you overbrand your images, they just won't get repinned. So it's just a lost effort.
Oh. Well, then it's more of a question that I had. I
It's
thought
sort of
it
like
mattered
those
how you
unwritten
share it.
rules of social media, right? When you think about the way that you interact online, the people who put their Tumblr line on the bottom of every picture, eventually those memes just go away, and the ones that continue to exist are the ones that have no branding.
And I think you have to be very careful, as you are with Twitter and Facebook, when you're deciding when somebody shares it, what's it going to say. And here's an example.
Yeah.
Today, I got a tweet on my Hersey account that, and it said, "Little hope for
Hersey
Fort
account.
Erie." That's what it said, and then the link. I knew where it was coming from, and I knew they meant the track, right, because I'm following the racetrack problems. And I didn't really think anything about it, and then I went to the article from Niagara this week, and then I thought, well, I'm going to click Pinterest because it was happening tonight and see what happens. It was pinning the photo, but it said "Little help for Fort Erie." Well, is Fort Erie falling into the lake or something? What does that mean? And I only knew because it came from Equine Niagara, so I was able to make that. If I had pinned that, these things, oh, little foot, oh my goodness, what's happening to poor Fort Erie? And they had, their subheading, which was racing report released today. So you have to be careful about what you say in the content, and it's the same as you have to be careful in content for Twitter and Facebook. So you can't just throw your picture up there with a little, blah blah. You have to think through about what's going to happen when it gets repinned.
When it comes to actually integrating Pinterest into a website that you have, there's really two ways to do it. There's the useful way, and then there is the probably not useful way. The useful way, which is the more work way, is that if you have a key image that is part of the piece of content that you've shared, you can put the pin it button on there and have it link straight to that image. So when someone hits pin it, it's going to bring up that image. The other way to do it, and I'm guilty of doing this for clients that have asked for it, is you can put the little pin it button on the website on the article that you have in the same place that you would put, say, a Twitter tweet this button and the Facebook like button. And when you hit the pin it button, it basically does the standard Pinterest share thing, which is that it scrapes all the images off the page and it goes, well, which of these images do you want to share? And in most cases I've found is that if you're not a photo or image driven site, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, someone like me that writes, my main point of content is blog posts. Well, when I post blog posts, I'm not a photographer, so the photographs I have to include with them are usually Creative Commons images. So no one cares about that image that I have on there. And if that image gets shared onto Pinterest, it doesn't necessarily have any contextual, reference back to my original article. It's going to make sense to anyone that's going to see it. So for someone like me, the pin it button is sort of useless.
You mean like your image from Lawrence Welk yesterday?
Like my image from Lawrence Welk yesterday, right? So
which made sense in the context of the posting, but not in.
But where'd you get the image? Pinterest?
Which image is this?
No, isn't it Lawrence Welk at the top of your blog posting yesterday?
That was a cover of, I can't remember the name.
Guy Lombardo.
Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians, the original.
Same thing.
The original performers of Enjoy Yourself, It's Later Than You Think, that was later covered by the Specials on their album More Specials in, 1978? Find that out for me someone. 82 maybe? Anyways,
right on it.
Point being, listen to the Specials.
What? That was a really good blog post and a really good special song.
It was. What'd you ask? Yeah. Generally, when sourcing images for blog posts, though, no, you use like a Creative Commons search. You can actually search. This is totally off topic. You can search Flickr for images that are able to be used commercially and are Creative Commons licensed, and you can pull things out of that. And then as long as you put a credit on where you got the image from, you're generally more or less safely covered for it. But that has nothing to do with Pinterest. So.
Okay, last question.
At the bottom, when you're pinning a picture, at the bottom, there's a choice to write something. What is the most important thing to have in there?
I mean, when you're pinning on behalf of your business, it really depends on the relevance to your business. But the reason I sigh is because you have no control over what people put into that box when they repin it. So a lot of people are lazy and they just hit repin from their phone, and whatever you put just kind of continues and continues. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes that's really not the case. Sometimes people put things you wish they didn't put in there. But it's sort of like the nature of social media. You just
Look at what that jerk alley pinned.
yeah.
Your original, when you pin your original pin, is there something that like hopefully will carry on that is meaningful to have in them?
I mean, it's an opportunity to stick your website in there to do a little bit of branding, but to do branding in sort of like, not a like, hey, check out this thing and buy it at my website.
The keyword there was hopefully.
Yeah.
One last question here.
No,
Because
it was just a comment. If you're talking for a blog, if you want to pin something, why don't you just create a quick JPEG with the verbiage you want in it,
Because no one will
and you
pin
pin
it.
that one.
No one will pay attention to it. It's not very visually compelling.
I guess if you did it in a visually compelling way,
Yeah.
then you're a little bit
You
further
do-
along there.
do like an illustration instead.
It does make, I mean, it comes down to how much work are you going to put in on a blog post, where not only are you writing a blog post, but you're also making some word art to go with said blog post. You know, all of a sudden your hour-long job has become a 3-hour job, and then...
Somebody who recently tried to do a flow chart to go with their blog post, yeah. It expands.
Okay, we're going to stop there. Thank you, Adam and Ally, and you can maul them and attack them now in your free socializing time. So thank you all for coming. Please stay and socialize and finish what you're eating. November 27th is our next meeting, and we're going to be debating Facebook versus Twitter. Is it good for my business? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Adam.